So we're looking at two. Yep. Oh, yeah. Yep. It's in command and truck camp. Oh, that's what she's talking about. Yeah. Back in the day. All right. Just a few. All right. So we are set up, I think, on all technology pieces. Wonderful. Shift tactics. Oh my God. All right, you guys let me know when you're ready, because I'm ready. All right, it wouldn't be a KW class if we didn't put out our TCPA compliant warning. Make sure everybody is being compliant with TCPA rules. Fair housing, copyright materials, all the things. Cool. Number two. You want to do the participation. All right, so this is really exciting because one, this is my first time teaching this class. And what was amazing is how many tools KW have in order to teach this class. So yeah, you guys have manual, you have all this stuff, probably a little bit more structured than I would have planned. So everyone who's in here, how many of you have read Shift? Yeah, it's paperweight. Yeah, cool. It's pretty on the. Yep. So we are going over shift tactic number 2 today, and this is remargin your business through expense management. All right, main ideas. So we are going to be looking at our expenses, measuring our market, looking at the size of our business, cutting the fat, make the most of what you have, bottom line, and my action plan. Okay. So here's the reality of it. I'm not going to go through every single slide of this because it's just a lot, but we are currently experiencing the shifting market, correct? We saw it last year. We're definitely seeing it this year. Days on market's increasing, right? Homes aren't necessarily going into multiple offers where it's driving costs. So the sales volume is going to probably go down a little bit. Sales volume might go down. Last year was the worst year in sales units. So I think it was only what, 4 million? I remember the number when it was the same as like 95. Yeah, same as 1995, and they are anticipating that for this year as well. Okay, so that is going to impact you, realtors, right, and our income. Okay, we have to fine tune our skills, and we have to be very purposeful when it comes to our expenses. Because what happens, and I read a couple of lines, and I'm sure it's going to come up in here, is that it's really easy to hide your poor expense management when you're making a lot of money. But it gets exposed when the market shifts and your income decreases where you're managing your expenses. Okay, so that was a big point in here is um, so a good market hides your expense management if you're not taking care of it. Tough markets expose it. All right. So if you don't pay attention to how profit is made and lost, you'll most likely create and maintain a profit margin on the way up that will immediately disappear on the way down, never to be found again. Okay. All right. So here's the thing. The reality is the market's hard right now. However, how is that it's going to impact the agents, but can you still thrive in a down market? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's face it, help agents this year. So even if the numbers stay the same, from your skill sets are the same or better,
Yeah.
you should still do what you did last year.
Absolutely. I mean, we were talking about in team meeting yesterday statistics about NAR. One, the first statistic, which has been around forever, is that agents who first get into the business, 80% of them fail out in the first 2 years. I think it's 18 months, not even 2 years. 80% of new licensees fail out of the business in the first 18 months. The other statistic that NAR released, this was early last year, right around when the lawsuit was getting settled, is that they're expecting 50% of all NAR members to go out of the business. That's nationwide. Okay. So, but when you look at those numbers, I see opportunity, and I'll never forget. I had Brian Jackson run into my office one day, and I was explaining, information that I'd heard on a Zoom, and he's like, "I love this market. This is where I thrive because what you're doing is, if you're sticking to it, sharpening your skills, you're gaining market share, and that market share is going to continue and only increase when the market softens. And so it's a great opportunity. I think there's a ton of homes to be sold, and if you're willing to put it all in, then you're going to gain from that. Okay. All right. So protect your market margin. So when the market shifts, your margin becomes your biggest issue. Protecting your margin equals saving your business. It's time to cut back on expenses. Unless it's nailed down, it goes. All right. So let's talk about this. So when the market shifts, your margin becomes your bigger issue. So if your income starts to decrease and you're not doing anything with your expenses, your profit margin dives and it just continues to dive down. All right. So when our expenses continue to decrease, our income continues to decrease, and we have to really look at our expenses and we have to start cutting. Have you guys ever heard of the term lead with revenue? Okay, not lead with expense, lead with revenue, right? And we just talked about that. Okay, get your money in shape. Phenomenal opportunities exist, but you need to be fighting fit if you want to take advantage of them. So we're going to measure our market, we're going to size your business, we're going to cut the fat, and we're going to make most of what you have. All right, your money and your people built their strength and were in superb condition for a seller's market. But in a shifted market, they need to be retrained and reconditioned to generate income for you in a buyer's market, which is a whole new arena. Your people were in shape, but the second the market shifts, it's like facing sudden death in final seconds of the game. Phenomenal opportunities exist in a shifted market, but you need to be fighting fit with a working margin and profitable business to take full advantage. Okay, and these are the steps we're going to follow. All right, getting the most out of this experience. All right, we have what kind of student will you be in this class? Okay, so we're going to break down 3 different students here. Okay, we have the prisoner, which has to be there, doesn't want to be there, and doesn't know why you're there. So are you the prisoner? Are you the vacationer? A day in training is better than a day on the job. Are you the explorer, excited, curious about the new knowledge, skills, and tools that you'll discover in this class? All right.
I'm exploring.
You're exploring? Right. What are you? Yes.
An explorer.
Okay. So prisoners and vacationers don't get much of anything out of the class. Explorers who embrace learning earning sake, participate fully, and commit to implementing what they learn are the true winners in class. I don't know why that was in there. Okay, now we're going to start on the tactics here. All right, so we've got to measure our market. So we got to follow the pendulum swing. You guys ever heard of that term, pendulum? Right. Like a pendulum on the clock that swings back and forth, the market shifts from buyers to sellers and back again. Because it may take 5 or 6 months for the pendulum to swing between one market and the next, you may be lulled into a false sense of security, thinking you have plenty of time to adjust, but beware. The pendulum will pick up speed as it moves and can swing from one market to the next very quickly. We have to be ahead of it, right? By the time most people see where the pendulum is swinging, it's already too late. It's going to be coming back the other way, okay? So by carefully tracking your MLS statistics as well as your own, you will be better able to predict a coming downturn and make the timely cuts that can mean the difference between surviving and thriving or not. If any of the following numbers are shifting, it is a clear signal that your market is transitioning and cuts will likely need to be made in order to protect your margin. Okay, so here are the things on the indicators of a pendulum swing. We've got more inventory. So use your local MLS to track inventory every 2 weeks to see if inventory is increasing. Go back at least 2 months to get a long-term perspective. All right. What are you guys seeing right now? More snooze fest? Well, yeah, but what are you seeing on the MLS?
Days on market. Inventory went up 56% above the month, but sales.
Okay. So wouldn't you think that if there's more houses going on the market, the sales would increase? So if the sales are not increasing, then that supports the days on market and then longer inventory, more inventory. Okay. Increased days on market, use your local MLS to track DOM for at least the last 2 months to get a long-term perspective. Days on market. So do you guys use, this is an Ohio tool. I don't know if they have it with, I can't seem to find one with Kentucky. This is syndicated with the Cincy MLS, but they have the Domos Analytics. So I have this saved on my bookmark bar.
Yeah.
You guys seen this before?
It doesn't look, so on the MLS, it's like a daily box.
Yeah, I seen it, yeah.
But it doesn't make a graph with everything. They're all separate.
So this is an interesting tool because you can use this. I'm just going to put Hamilton in here. I know that we've got multiple other counties that we cover, but this is released probably the day after the new month. So like February 2nd, it'll have, or maybe the next business day, February 3rd, it'll have the actual statistics, but you could do the entire statistics for the state, but this is just on Hamilton. So in December, it was saying that the average sales price 270, days on market were 15, 523 new listings, active inventory 1,149. What's really interesting about this tool is you can then go back and see what it was like in December of 2023. So in December of 2023, you have an active inventory of 790. This is significantly less than what we were looking at when we were in 2024. Okay, new listings 481. The average day on market was 12. I mean, December is a different month because you're dealing with the holidays and stuff like that. But this is a really great tool if you haven't been using it.
You can go to more stats. And do different, but like
was gonna say, so that exports out into, oh, that's great.
Yeah, and then you can change a lot.
Yeah, that's fun. Cool. All right. So this is saying, okay, so now we need to look at our inventory. So we need to look every 2 weeks to see if inventory is increasing, decreasing, and then even go back 2 months to really kind of get a perspective. We're looking at our MLS days on market. I mean, that's got to be just part of your weekly ritual. I mean, you have to be in tune with the market. Okay, fewer pendings, another indicator. Use your MLS to compare pendings now. Pendings at the same time last year, see if they're flat or decreased. If your board numbers are decreasing, lower production, sales volume, fewer leads. Okay, so these are all indicators of your market. All right. And then you have to look at your pipeline. Track your income for the next 60 days. Calculate how many closings you have, projected closings. So if you're not really paying attention to what's in your pipeline, then do you actually know your numbers? I mean, that's the thing. This class right now is knowing your numbers, not only your production numbers, but you have to look at your expenses, and you have to look at a lot of basically your truths, things that you might not really want to know and are afraid of. You've got to dive into them. So watching your pipeline is huge. I mean, it goes through, like, there's strategies when it comes to like your budget and paying yourself, and it just the ups and downs, right? There's a constant. You've got December lows and January lows and February lows. It starts to build up, then people go on vacation, then it goes up again in the fall, and then it kind of dies down, right? Now, our expenses can't be riding the same ride that our market does. Okay, they have to stay consistent. And so they have to stay consistent, and we have to be bare minimum, because as we mentioned earlier, you can hide up here your expenses not being paid attention. Well, I'm making a profit here. Okay, well, what are you going to be doing down here when you have the same operating expenses that you incur no matter if you sell any real estate? So your expenses can't do the same roller coaster ride as your sales do. Okay, keep an eye on your pipeline.
Also, once you've been in the business, go back.
Mhm.
And make sure you know when you're confident with all of your expenses in January. It's slower, so don't get all happy at the end of December and think you're gonna tax write-offs.
Yeah.
These tax write-offs, and everybody's saying, ooh, this is a tax write-off. Everybody starts buying. Well, it's not stuff. Well, then January's slow, and then you get hit with all your.
Well, it's a cash flow issue then.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. And you have to, you have to budget. You know, I highly suggest as splitting up your income. So if you receive a commission, that you are taking aside for your estimated taxes, and that you're taking aside for some of these like bigger expenses that you have. So if you think about it, all right, we all know that MLS dues are in June for Ohio. That's going to be about $460. All right. So if I'm looking in right now, trying to plan ahead for a payment in June, I need to be setting aside 75 to $100 every single month for that lump sum payments. Those lump sum payments catch people. I know that the MLS dues and the board dues are really difficult, but so again, if you plan ahead, that MLS due, that's $400 in this month. Okay, that I don't want my expense to be up to here. So, but my expense is more maintainable if I only have a $75 expense in January, or we'll say February, $75 expense in March, and you just lead up to it. So that goes into that consistent expenses that you could spread out over the month. And so that's why it's important. Like, you really should have one checking account, a secondary checking account for maybe some of your annual fixed expenses that you're feeding small pieces into, and then a savings account that you can generate interest on, and that you could use to pay your tax liability at the end of the year. Does that make sense? Where you can make smaller payments towards, makes it a lot easier than having to pay $450 lump sum that you haven't saved up for. So that goes in time. So right now you have to look at your board dues, which were almost $700, and you've got your MLS dues. So you combine those expenses and you divvy it up for the rest of the year, and you just start putting a small piece of amount into that account every single month, and that's going to generate. Or you look at your if you're not consistently generating sales, then you have to look at, how much of this am I going to put in when my sales are high, so that it can accommodate when the sales are low and I can't maybe contribute. No. No, they'll send out, they send out the invoice in a month and a half, but here's also the thing, like, if you have that secondary account, you can tell me, like, when you have a closing, split it up this way for me, and I can.
It's fun to do it myself. I love seeing my money come in, so.
Yeah.
I've got the finance for a while, so I have an account where all my expenses go, and then from there I do 10% into our office.
Mhm.
So basically, one closing is 10%, but if it's April and I have 5 closings, it's 10%. So throughout, and then now we're doing like a big event in summer and big stuff in the winter. So then how much extra, somebody's texting about this, like they say 5% for like something big. Like big things that they do for. So mine would be some of these events. And this year I'm really thinking about restructuring. Like, no closing gifts. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of, or meeting person. So like, that's why we're here. So I'm just like, okay, 100%. I think
Yeah.
better, more impactful.
Well, and we'll break it down later. It's how is this, what is the ROI on it? Absolutely. Okay. So this also is part of measuring your market. How many closings are in the pipeline for next 2 months? Especially when you're looking at June, when everyone's running around with their head cut off, because you see it. You can track the roller coaster because people get too busy with transactions in that spring market, that they're not building up their pipeline for 2 months down because they're just in that current state. So that's a leverage issue, right? Because if you're too focused on when the market is high and you're busy, you're not building your pipeline for 2 months down the road, 3 months down the road, 4 months down the road. So it is important, like measuring your market, seeing the days on market, and then looking at your own product, pipeline, and seeing what's down the road. That is also an indicator of a shifting market as well. And what is your projected income for those? All right, in April, if I'm looking, I know that I have an MLS due in June. What's my income that I'm projecting over the next 2 months? Am I going to be able to cover those expenses? What do I need to generate in order to cover that? And then what is your average monthly income based on your 60-day production? So maybe your pipeline is looking a little low. How much do you pay yourself? Maybe you have to slow that down just to accommodate for those expenses, okay?
I know when the sheds conversations first started around COVID, the big thing they said agents would do is take money out of their business instead of taking away from their own lifestyle.
Mhm.
So then your business is hindered 6 months later, that you didn't invest in your business. Don't pull all your money out of your business because you know it works. But do it on your personal thing more than your business.
Because your business income is ideally supposed to be reinvested in order to continue to build your business.
Yeah.
If you're tapping into that to pay for a lifestyle that you may be living above your means, then when you look up, and it's not going to feel that way at first, it's going to feel that way 2-3 months down the road when you need to try to build your database and you need some income for some marketing and you don't have that money there. And those are expenses that have an ROI. Your lifestyle and vacations don't give you a return on investment.
Like since we got our second dog, I've had one manager. So sometimes I said, I'm good. And then we're pushing it back 2 weeks longer. Like just little changes.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure that my nails and my dog are so many.
Yeah.
So we started doing stuff a while back.
Yeah.
Even though last year was our best year we've ever had.
Right. But you know that things are getting harder. And so you're ahead of the swing, which is good. Right? Okay. So there is an activity examining your personal expenses.
My wine budget's a little high. That's a business expense. What do you say?
All right. Do you guys have the oops. Yep. Yep. So we're not going to do this activity now because it would just take up too much of the time. But this is something that you should do, everyone should do, is you grab your bank statement at the end of the month and you itemize all of your personal expenses. It is a reality that no one really likes to be in. But when you go through that activity, it is eye-opening, absolutely eye-opening. So I did this activity with my own personal expenses in November last year. I wasn't doing a very good job. I was able to, let's see, between subscriptions, changing my internet subscriber, cutting a few things, I immediately started saving like $380 a month just from sitting down and facing the reality that I didn't really want to face. Okay. So please do this exercise. Go in and itemize. And you have to be consistent with this too. Okay. So if you do this activity monthly and you go in and you see El Rancho Grande on there and, you know, the donuts, what is that? What is this place called? Dunkin' Donuts and stuff like that. You know, you can't put it in there. Your coffee every day as an expense is part of your meals of wining and dining clients. Like that's not a return on investment. Like you have to be real with your expenses that, you know, because that could be on the chopping block. So be consistent on how you categorize these things. So that is an activity that you need to do this weekend. Okay. It is yep.
Yeah.
I get it. Right. Okay. And so the next activity, so we're looking at our personal. So your lifestyle may need some adjustments. It's not the time for extensive vacations, redecorating your home, or buying a new car. Categorize all your personal expenses so you know exactly where your money is going. Okay. Put it in a spreadsheet. Look and see, how much am I spending on meals, eating out? That is a big one. Subscriptions, right? All those things, itemize how much you're spending and where you can cut. What I would also do is identify your variable expenses. Those are the ones that have those hidden costs that you're not quite sure about. Variable is going to be, you know, a variable expense is going to be how much you eat out, right? Sometimes you have subscriptions to a workout place, or, you know, sometimes they hit you with a random fee that you weren't aware of, or maybe you missed a class and they hit you with a fee because you didn't show up to a class or whatnot. So a lot of those variables identify, because those are the ones that you really need to be aware of, because those can jump monthly. Okay. Adjust your lifestyle costs to just below your projected income. That way you can be pleasantly surprised when you have extra. All right. So you're going to do that activity. Now we're going to measure the size of your business. Follow budget for your business. Who has a budget for their business? Um, budget's really important. I do a budget for just the market center, and what's really great is when I send my financials, I can look and see where I'm at on my budget. You in reviewing your budget. I think that's what sometimes people will just throw numbers in there like, oh yeah, I've created a budget and there's really no rhyme or reason. It's a good time to look at your expenses from 2024 and apply them to this year. Look at those expenses from 2024 and dissect it, okay? An example that I give is a lot of new agents will come in and they'll immediately start buying Zillow leads, okay? It pains me to say it. And this is live on YouTube, so I'm sure it's gonna get taken down because I'm bashing. Anyways, yeah, 2/3. So, okay, so how much money did you spend on Zillow leads is a question I can ask, okay? How many closings did you get out of that? What is your return on investment? So you have to break down your expenses and you have to look at every single line item and see what's my return on investment. If it does not have a return on investment, it's got to be gone, right? Because right now we're trimming the fat on everything. And so you have to look at those expenses. Is there an ROI? All right. We have a P&L statement that I can share with you all after this class. It has a chart of accounts, which is really cool. So it helps you when you're looking at those expenses to make sure you're consistently itemizing them. All right, so we're gonna do an activity. All right, so this is another activity, all right? So we're finding our margin. So now we've identified what our potential income is. So we're looking ahead 2 months ahead. We're looking at our personal expenses. And we need to calculate in our business expenses. All right, so we got to look at, so when you're looking at your business, if you're running it under an LLC, okay, if you're generating consistent income, you should be paying yourself a consistent salary, and that should not be a high amount. Your first year specifically, if you have consistent closings, is a bare minimum, okay? That bare minimum is to cover your expenses. So you have to look at your personal expenses and pay yourself just a little bit over that amount, if that's your only income source, okay? So if my personal expenses are $4,500 a month, maybe if I'm generating multiple closings a month, maybe my business is only paying me $5,000 a month. And then you take that 500 difference and put it into a savings account. Okay, maybe that margin is a little bit different. Okay, so now that I have my what I'm paying myself, my personal side's covered by my business paying it. Now I have to add up all the rest of my business expenses that I have. Salary is one of those. And I have to look at my projected income. My projected income with my closings coming up in the next 2 months doesn't cover my monthly business expenses. That means it's not going to cover my salary, which means my salary is not going to cover my personal. So I have to look and identify if that number is negative, what am I doing? I got to cut some things. What expenses do I have? Are they generating income? Are they generating money-making activities? So as much as you don't want to, you got to look at your numbers. So once you determine that, then you're going to be able to determine your profit margin, right? Subtract those. After you do these activities, that's when you have to identify what needs to go, right? What needs to go? Got to cut those expenses. And then the second activity, because growth solves everything, is you got to step up your lead generation. You got to get some business in. So we're going to cut our expenses to the bare minimum, absolute bare minimum. Shifting market, expenses have to be as low as possible. And then I need to step up my lead generation. There might be expenses that come in with lead generation. Sure, if you want to buy leads. But if you're not even calling your database to start with, then that's where that's where you need to go. Maybe I'm only doing 2 hours of lead generation a day and I'm not getting any appointments. What does that identify? Maybe I need to work on my script practicing. Maybe I need to work on my skill set, right? Maybe I'm getting the appointments. So my lead generation, I've got 2 hours lead gen. I'm setting 2 appointments a week, 1 appointment a week, but I haven't converted any. So what's the issue there? That's a conversion issue. Okay, so now what do I have to do? I'm going on a tangent here. I need to identify the conversion issue. Again, my skill sets, and I need to work on that. So you got to track those numbers as well. How many calls am I making a day? How many calls do you make a day?
I would say 15.
Okay. How many of the 15 answer?
3 or 4.
Okay. How many appointments do you set usually with 3 or 4 call conversations?
It's minimal.
Maybe 1 a day, if that. Okay. So if I'm looking at making 15 phone calls a day, do I track how many dials I make or do I track how many conversations I have? Yeah. So we need to focus on the conversations that you're actually having. And then you can really truly get your conversion rates. And then those people that don't answer, do we have a system in place on follow-up since they didn't answer the first time, right? So that's upping up your lead generation, being more purposeful with that time. So we're cutting our expenses down to the bare minimum, and then we're stepping up our lead generation in a shifting market. Ooh, cut the fat. All right, cutting the fat. Take stock and look for results. Keep one question upmost in your mind. How does this expense help produce a buyer or seller lead? And then it's saying, if I don't know or it doesn't, then cut it. So every single expense, how is this going to produce a buyer or seller? And if it doesn't, get it out. All right, so this is giving you an idea. Try zero-based budgeting. So cut every expense back to zero and reallocate funds to justifiable expenses.
This is the every dollar like is we're gonna see.
Yeah. All right. So you must hold your expense accountable for results if you want to run a lean and mean machine. As you examine your P&L statement, one question should be upmost in your mind. How does this expense help produce a buyer or seller lead or close a transaction? If the answer is I don't know or worse, it doesn't, then it is an expense that should be cut. Your cost of sale is important in any market, but in a shifted market, it is time to look at every element and decide whether or not you're going to get money's worth. So try zeroing out based budgeting. Typically, when organizations review a budget, they start with the previous year's expenses and either add or subtract from those existing numbers. In zero-based budgeting, however, every expense is cut back to zero and funds are only reallocated if the expense can be justified. Does this produce business? Or if it is a fixed necessity, your MLS dues, as an example, your budget will then be built around what is needed for upcoming period, regardless of whether it is more or less than previous year expense. So essentially it's taking, the idea is you take your must-have expenses, your MLS dues, expenses that you need just to do business, leave those, but then everything else, your meals, maybe it's gas, maybe it's marketing, listing photos, those all go down to zero. And you take them and you identify them and you figure out, start your budget there and how much you're willing to spend a month on that. And then we're going to start cutting. All right. So we're going to start cutting. Snail mail. Let's see if it goes through each one of them. No, it doesn't. Okay. So they got a list what we're going to cut. Snail mail. It's so funny. Go paperless. Send a card to everyone in your database announcing that from now on, in order to cut back on paper waste, all communication will be by email. Ask them to send you their email address and then call anyone in your database who does not respond to to touch base and get their contact information. Woo! That's an expense you can cut.
Yeah.
Hidden benefit. You now have an opportunity to contact your database by phone to explain your campaign, build a relationship, ask for referrals, and get multiple email addresses where possible. Husband, wife. Interesting take.
A segue off that is just for your,
Oh, fun. Okay, so close Facebook group for your past clients.
yeah, that's. We spend at least $230 a month on reminder media, and I
Mm-hmm.
give to do a minimum of 50 and I get a full amount. Anyway, that we were. I just make.
Mm-hmm.
Because, but like when I for for us or opportunities is stories or whatever. And, oh yeah, you're a Kentucky. This person buying and selling. Those are things that I have kept in contact with people, but it's not these reminders.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Well,
like,
and there, you can't, it's not trackable either. Like you don't know who keeps it on their coffee table. It's the same with like those direct mail pieces. Like there's no ROI. You can't track it. You can't tell how many people have gotten your card and actually have used it. Is it on your fridge?
But like, can you do that through social media pretty well? Yeah, and then you know who's not on social media, so you do extra touches to them instead of.
Well,
that's but that's a big
yeah.
For us. We spent about $3,000 last year.
Yeah.
On that, and I can't track any business from it.
So like I said, if you don't know what your return on investment is, then cut it. Yeah. In the same sense with that, like you have statistics essentially in your internal Facebook group that you create. It's the same with email campaigns that go out, is you can track everyone who opens it, and then you can track everyone who doesn't open it. So if they're not actually reading your emails, then that's an opportunity to call and have that conversation. Maybe you have an outdated email from them. Maybe you need to get an updated email. Maybe they've switched jobs and your email just keeps getting dumped into it. Oh, but that is, I think a birthday card is such a much more impactful touch than a magazine.
Yeah.
Because it's more personal. They actually know that you sat there and wrote that and you didn't just throw it in the CRM. Huh? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I don't think this is saying to cut handwritten notes, but like mass mailers or, the reminder media, things like that. Okay. Yeah. No worries. No worries. All right. So this talks about if you're currently renting an office space, consider moving into a cubicle. If you're renting a cubicle, consider moving into a home office. Hidden benefit in a shifted market, your relationships are key. You can be outside the office getting face-to-face with your prospects. I'm kind of on the fence with this one. Obviously, if you're looking ahead at your projected income and it doesn't support an office fee, if you're renting a space, but I feel that there's a lot of benefits also to consistently going to a space. It doesn't have to be renting an office. It could be a common area, but there's that level of accountability that you don't get when you just go to your home office. I could not work from home.
I can do some things from home, but depends when it's during the day.
Yeah.
I can do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, when my daughter was sick a couple days ago, I tried working from home and I got my laundry done. I got my dishes done.
Everything, but.
Yeah, and I got some work done, but was I highly productive? No. Yeah. Vendor contracts. It is time to pull out your contracts for your phone, internet service provider, and car leases and renegotiate your agreements. Often all it takes is a phone call to get reductions. So you gotta look at everything. But, huh?
Costco for 4%.
Yeah.
I make all my payments and I'm not gonna use this card as much as don't reduce it.
Yeah, and so that's part of that those hidden costs that you're not aware of. Cable service providers are the worst. I mean, they just every year or even like biannual, they're increasing their expenses. And then you look up. So I did this with my internet. I had the same internet provider for probably 6 years. And I kept saying, oh, I got to get to it. I got to get to it. Just keeps increasing, keeps increasing. And I had this fear of having to change providers because it would have been an inconvenience for me. Finally, I did it. So I went from paying $110 for internet for Alta Fiber to a 2-year locked-in rate with Spectrum. It's a contract Spectrum, but I'm paying $39.99. Same service. One subscription alone, and I'm saving $80 a month. That's insane to me, or $70 a month. Yeah, that's insane. That was just one. That was one phone call. I had a hard time setting it up. All my fears about having to set it up on my own happened, but I called them and they got it worked out and I didn't have to pay extra for it. But just that one. And it's funny, it's because they'll always come back like, oh, well, we'll decrease the amount. So even if you want to keep that service provider, just calling and they'll decrease their amount. Yeah, I went off. So thank you for anyway, go on that tangent. So going through every single expense that you have going out of your personal and your business, call them and try to renegotiate those contracts. Hi, Brian. All right, print advertising, which goes in your reminder media. Primary purpose of print advertising is to establish your brand, not sell houses. May not want to cut newspaper advertising completely because it is an important but part of your branding, but it typically does not yield a great percentage of buyer and seller leads. You will want to seriously examine this expense. So even if you have expenses, that's hard. You have to really understand if there's an ROI on it. Okay. The money you save on print advertising can be applied to more effective forms of advertising. For example, marketing pieces or online advertising. So just anything that's print. Cut. Think of 2 areas where you can cut today. I think we talked about that. We're not going to go through there. So they have this activity in here where you just basically can write, like I put everything in a spreadsheet. So when you go through your budget or all your expenses, I would put it in a spreadsheet and create columns. Column for how much you're actually spending a month, and then a column for where you could potentially cut it. Because to go through the activity, it's always nice to see the results of your efforts. You can easily go down, you change the prices, and you can look at how much you currently saved in just making those changes. Just nice to look at it. All right. The people in the class won't have to necessarily worry about the payroll, but if you were running like a big team and you had multiple ISAs, transaction coordinators, you have to look at what leverage you're utilizing and how it's impactful. So a transaction coordinator is going to give you time. Time is invaluable. It's just priceless, right? So if you're running a bunch of transactions, TC is going to help you with that time so you can generate more leads. All right? Personal assistant might not be in the budget, right? So you have to look at what you're expensing on payroll and potentially cut hours there. We're not going to dig into this. All right. So the lead generation piece of cutting. All right. So I'm just gonna kind of touch a little bit more on the, probably good. Are we good to go about like 10, 15 more minutes, or do you guys? Okay. All right, so in a shifting market, your lead generation should be focused on prospecting and enhanced by marketing.
Say that again, right?
Yep. Everyone in the back here, in a shifting market, your lead generation should be focused on prospecting and enhanced by marketing. So often, I will have someone, I always pick on the new licensees because a lot of times new licensees know it all.
Oh.
They come in, you're not a new licensee. You're not a new licensee. Where they will come in and they will focus all of their time and effort on marketing and branding and trying to come up with the new shiny thing that they just think people are going to come flocking to. Totally wrong. They don't even pick up their phone and call their sphere of influence. I've had multiple agents who've left and we've had that hard conversation. They're like, well, I'm not getting the leads that I wanted. I came to this place or KW because I thought I was going to get leads okay, well, let's break that down. It's too expensive. Okay, let's break that down. How many closings have you had? Well, I haven't had any closings. Okay, well, you haven't paid the company anything. One, two. How many people have you actually called in your database? Well, I don't like to call them. Okay, all right. How much money did you spend on XYZ shiny thing? Oh, I spent all this money. It's too expensive. Real estate's too expensive. Okay. So you're not calling your database. You're spending your money, you're leading with expenses, you're not leading with revenue, and you've had 0 closings. Why would you spend? I had this one agent who spent like $6,000 his first month, signed up for contracts that went for an entire year. So this agent, and this wasn't a new agent, this was an experienced agent. They signed up for follow-up calls. They signed up, for all these new shiny things, the Zillow leads, all this stuff. And they're year contracts, and they got stuck having to pay $6,000 a month for an entire year. And then it was my fault. But he led with the expenses. He went and bought the easy button. There is no easy button. The easy button is you call your database and prospect. Okay. So this idea is it's saying you call, you lead generate. You call FSBOs and expireds. You hold more open houses. These are all things that really don't cost any money, right? It doesn't cost any money to pick up your phone. All right. Get involved in your community. All right. So Met work. Strengthen your relationship with your Mets and your sphere of influence and reconnect if necessary. Lead generate faithfully for 3 hours every day. Spend time making both cold and warm calls and knocking on doors. That's really important. You get some new agents who come in and they're like, oh, my first 5 calls, they're cold calls, and nobody answered, or they didn't really want to hear from me, and then they get discouraged and they quit, right? Mix in the easy calls with the harder calls. Makes it a little bit easier to lead generate for 3 hours when you have some substantial conversations, and then you have a few people that might hang up on you. Okay. For megas, it is time to get personally re-engaged in prospecting. It is an opportunity to retrain the team through role modeling, and will have a great impact on conversation rates. Peter is going in and working with his team. He knows it's a shifting market. He stepped it up last year. His business. Yes, he came to bowl. He's sitting there with his team. They're making the same calls. He's not going to sell a product that he doesn't believe in, and he's not actually doing the same thing. Peter doesn't need to sell real estate right now. He doesn't need to make those phone calls, but he believes in it, and he's coming into his team and he's working with them. Prospect for FSBOs and expireds, hold more open houses, and get involved in your community. Volunteer, play team sports, organize neighborhood block party. I was talking with Sam Marine. She's looking to farm her neighborhood. I'm like, is there an HOA? Yes. Is there a community building where you guys can host events? Is there a pool? There's so many different opportunities to network within that community. And that's a perfect farming opportunity.
We're doing that a lot.
Nice.
Like, some were clients, past clients, but most of the people that are being.
Oh, right, yeah. Yeah.
It was great.
Oh, yeah, co-brand.
Posted on the community page and it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Good. I'm pulling up your website.
I think after Santa, and we did pay for next door photos to come for professional photography. I think it was about $300, but that's like pictures that people are gonna see over and over. Think of you. Remember that day. People had FOMO, but didn't come. People already said, "Are you gonna do this again next year?" Like, you know what I mean? That's a feeling in a relationship rather than spending $300 on reminder video.
Great.
Where the only feedback we get is from his mom. She likes to sit them out at rooms of tea and like book club and things that she does, but we haven't really had any.
Right. Yeah. It's relationship business. It's really hard to have a relationship through a magazine. Yeah. Okay. So it's focusing on marketing or it's focusing on prospecting. And then you market for a direct response. So we have marketing for direct response. So here's some have you ever heard the term red light, green light? So it's time to play red light, green light with your marketing expenses and hold them accountable to results to ensure that you are getting maximum return on investment. In a shifting market, your marketing should exist as a means of driving customers to speak to you either on the phone or in person, in addition to brand building. Okay, so marketing for direct response. So here are some things that you can use. If you want to sell your home now, call me. If you want to buy a home today, call me. Need to sell your home? Call Janice today. I have buyers who are interested in your neighborhood. Call me if you are ready to sell now. I can help you get the most out of your home today. Call me to learn how. So marketing for direct response. All right. So you're driving customers to speak with you rather than building your brand. Follow up your marketing with personal contact. Okay, so you should follow up with your marketing with personal contact on the phone or face-to-face. So mailings, they're giving you scripts essentially. So with mailings, hello, this is Lindsey from Keller Williams Realty. I was just calling to see if you received our marketing report. So if you send out a newsletter with content, you can easily call them. Hey, did you get my newsletter? You can also track in command. You can see who actually opened it. So you could target everyone in your database that opened your email that you sent out or your campaign and just say, hey, I'm just following up on the email that I sent out last week. Did you have any questions? Or I'm not a content creator on the script, so don't follow me directly on that. But you get the idea, okay? Flyers, delivering them in person. Here's a script. Hello, I'm Lindsey from Keller Williams Realty. I just wanted to give you some information on a home for sale in your neighborhood. Is anyone you know interested in buying property in this area? Yeah.
But that's such a great way for people to like doing things that are listening. Plants around the board, neighborhood where buildings are. That makes them have a lot of listening. But like, get a flyer together that list. It matters not just listed. And after they get it, there's like,
Yeah.
one person said something.
Yeah.
Like, we just need more like things where people start coming together.
Well, that's a lot. Well, PC is doing a lot of that.
Outside the street, like a couple blocks down. Outside the street, but people that open house there on Saturday.
That's awesome.
Wednesday, we were out flyers.
Well, Larry Smith did that. So Larry Smith was doing an open house for Maggie. We did a video in our thing, in our internal page. But Larry did an open house for Maggie and went door knocking leading up to the open house and got a buyer and a seller out of it. His first house he knocked on, I think, or second house, or yeah, and then I think it's the guy's relative selling too. Something like that. So he ended up getting like generating two pieces of business just by doing the activity. It's huge. And that doesn't really cost much money. Yep.
That's all, we didn't really even have a script, it's like, hey,
Yeah,
I'm so-and-so,
that's it.
handed them the flyer, like, yeah, this right down the street here, most of them had it all marked for a while, so they all knew it.
Yeah.
Two houses for the corner of the high school, everybody needed to buy it all the time. Like, oh, let's do it, let's go. We're ready to get it moving this week, so you wanna come out, if you have relatives or someone that you want to be your neighbor. You have about 30
Every neighborhood
people,
has,
you know.
oh, that's amazing. Every neighbor has a nosy neighbor. Every neighborhood has a nosy neighbor.
At least one. Maybe one.
Every single neighborhood. So, yeah. Oh, I bet. Absolutely.
We were picking up a direction. Like walk outside.
Just look.
How you doing? You want to talk about real estate? All right, here's the thing. What you cannot cut. So we've talked a lot about things about what to cut. Here are the things you cannot cut. Not everything must go long-term. Think long-term. Some people and services are worth keeping. Not everything must go. Think long-term. There are people and services that may be somewhat of a sacrifice to maintain now, but when the market shifts again and you made drastic cuts, you may not be able to get your people back or quickly rev up your services again. So remember, you're cutting expenses, not quality. Don't cut customer service. Expenses that impact your reach with customers are more important than ever. So we're not going to necessarily cut our communication with our clients. We may not send them a magazine, but maybe we're going to start sending them a newsletter. Or, how are you going to, that touch, make sure that you're not decreasing your customer service. Pre-listing packages, a human on the end of the phone line rather than a machine, and your personal availability to your buyers and sellers are all important aspects of customer service that you should not sacrifice. Okay. Don't cut training and coaching. Consider this expense as an investment that will actually help you make money and pay off more and can pay then more for itself. It's like being a homeowner and saying, I can't afford a realtor, so I'm going to go FSBO. But just like a good agent can net a seller more money, good training and coaching will increase your productivity. All right. I mean, you get accountability in coaching, right? If you don't have anyone holding you accountable. All right, I am gonna probably. Yeah, it's great. I just bought some new ones. There's an entire, I'm gonna actually, hold on.